Hello, survivors. This is Roy from Bootsy Sweetheart's Guide to Life and Other Disappointing Experiences with a very important two-part video. Once again, I'm making a quilt block for a project that Mark Darrell of the Quilting Marine has begun. And it's dealing with the issues of domestic violence. The title of the quilt is Love Shouldn't Hurt. Please stay with me and I'll walk you through how I did my contribution for this so worthwhile project. Thank you. When Mark announced the latest quilt challenge entitled Love Shouldn't Hurt, addressing the issues of domestic violence, I felt compelled to once again contribute a quilt block to this cause. Sadly, we all probably know someone, if they're not close to us, someone in our family who has been a victim of domestic violence. So I felt it really important. I also thought it was important that I design my own block. So I thought you might like to see how my process goes when I'm putting together something like this. So let me turn the camera down to the work surface. Please excuse the mess behind me. I'm creative, so that's supposed to be an excuse. So I had an index card. Ooh, fuzz. I had an index card, and you remember from elementary school how to make a square out of a rectangle. Simply fold the one long side along the one short side along the long side, creates a triangle, cut out the triangle, and here's my workspace. This is what I have to create my quilt block. Then I thought about the issues of domestic violence and how people, at least that I know, survived, and they survived because of love. And of course, the symbol for love is a heart. So my quilt block needed to incorporate a heart. And then the more I was thinking about it, is that the victim is in the beginning so damaged that they really close themselves up little by little with the help of therapy and family, friends and close family. Their heart starts to radiate love back out like it used to, and instead of being so closed because that person was so badly hurt. So I said, let me do some kind of a quilt where there's a heart in the middle, and the segments, the heart sort of radiates out the energies of love. And so what I did is created segments. Once again, if you know me, math is important to me, but the less I have to do when creating quilts, the happier I am. So I folded the square and then made segments. Then I folded it again. And of course, this is just a plan. It's not the final, certainly not the final size, because it has to be 12.5 inches unfinished. So that's a fairly large size block. And then once I had all of the lines drawn, folded rather, I took a pen and ruler and I just created the segments with the diagonals, and then because of the way I folded it, I have marks here where I know you probably can't see it on the screen, but there are fold marks, and you continue to do that and you end up with this pie plate kind of quilt block which in itself is very pretty. If you choose vibrant colors or meaningful colors, meaningful fabrics. And then I said I needed a heart, so I took the piece that was left over, I folded that in half and brought again my elementary school skills with me, and I just cut out a heart, the half on the fold. So you remember that, right? So there. And ta-da, I should have done this in well, I'm loving this design. It's 16 sections with a heart in the middle, as I showed you. And now I have to translate this into the size block that Mark wants. So I don't have paper big enough from the printer. That's a 8.5 by 11. I had some newsprint. I don't know how it's going to work with the paper piecing, but we'll try it. And you'll see it's a success or a failure. Just so happens that I have an OmniGrid block cutting ruler that's 12.5 by 12.5, and that's the size of the quilt block. So I'm going to cut this out with my paper cutter. Now I'm going to, excuse me for a second, I have to go around. I'm very fussy about not pulling the rotary cutter towards me. I want to make sure, I mean, if you've ever gotten a little cut with these, you know how bad that is. So there we go. Now, rather than spend all this time measuring, I sort of know from having folded this one exactly what I need to do. So I'm just going to fold. I know I need diagonals. Well, the diagonals I can literally measure, draw rather. But I want to make sure I score these pretty clearly because these are going to be big pieces. I don't want to wind up not being able to get the paper out of the stitches because it's a little heavier paper. We have one. I may rush this along a little bit. And I'm just going to fold it as accurately as I can. Make sure the corners are sharp. Okay. So far we've got this. All right. And I'm going to fold. I'm using the bone folding tool just to make sure that the creases are really sharp. Okay. Do I need to do this? Well, I'll do this. Yes, I need to do this. Now, come on. Okay. This harpens back to the old origami days. But you'll notice, thankfully, so far no math has played into this. Let's see what this looks like. Now I need 16. I was originally going to stop at this, but changed my mind. I thought the smaller pieces are going to be pretty. I found some nice fabric, which I'll show you. Now what I'm going to do, of course, like we always do, make sure we have sewing lines, stitching lines. I'm just going to make these pretty dark because they have to be seen. Can I see them from both sides? Oh my goodness, yes. This is going to be good. I think this is going to be good. Unless I have to struggle to get the paper out of the stitches. You'll notice I'm not striving for too much accuracy, but it'll be fine because these pieces are all close to perfect when you get done with this. Now in order to fold in order to find the centers here, I could measure it, but I was looking at it and it comes out to be some weird number. All I'm going to do is fold it in half like this. Trying to be as accurate as I can, and just put a little dimple there, a little dimple there, and mark it with my Sharpie. Fold this side. 1, 2, 3. This is going to be, I think this is going to be nice. Now, I don't know whether I mentioned it because I'm filming this in sections, so it's not continuous. But this is going to be sort of like what they call cutaway applique in a way. You'll see my take on it. I may have to break this up again into 2 videos, sorry. But I know that I'll lose some people who are really interested if it's too long of a video. So I'll break it maybe into 2, and then you can stop and start it when you have time. And there's always fast forward. See, and all I'm doing is connecting the dots. So far, not a single fraction of an inch was measured. Thank goodness. Oops, I didn't put the dot, but I can see the fold. Here to here. And there. And then here. Can you see that? Here. Oh, again, I didn't put the folds. I didn't put the dot. I can see it though, it's right here. This is going to be our foundation for the paper piecing. Now you can see there are 8 wedges that are the same. And here's 1, 2, those are the same. 3 and 4 are the same, kind of reversed. So we may have to watch out for that. 5 and 6 are the same, and so forth. It goes around. This is kind of important to keep the continuous sewing into that, either clockwise or counterclockwise, whichever way you decide to do it. But this is how this part of the pattern turns out. And there's a natural square that's being formed by the folds. And I think we'll use that as the size of the heart. That will go, oh my goodness, this is going to be nice. This is, ooh. Maybe I should do this more often. I like this. Anybody seeing Valentine's Day? Anybody seeing some sort of an engagement gift or a wedding anniversary gift? It's all going to depend on the fabrics. The fabrics will tell the story. So this is the pattern so far. And then we'll move on. I have made another one of these, so you may see one without numbers. Just want to be prepared. I was a Cub Scout, not a Boy Scout. Do you know, they didn't have a Boy Scout troop in my neighborhood. The fathers didn't have time. And now we're talking 53, 54, 55. The fathers didn't have time, so we went from Cub Scouts to nothing. Well, that was my rant for the day. Okay, so now the next step is to make the heart. Making the heart is pretty simple. I want to just get a scale that fits the block. So I found the center square that happened when I folded the paper to be probably the right size. I like the little heart, and that's probably going to be for another block that I make. So it turns out it measures about 6.5 inches square. Measure twice, measure thrice, cut once. I tend to do a lot of cutting more than once. So I've got the square and now brushing it up just a little bit, going back to elementary school, fold it in half. I want a fairly dramatic heart, so I'm making it chunky and nice and big. It's all freehand, you know. Remember, third grade, second grade, we made all the snowflakes and we made hearts and we made dolls that hold hands, paper dolls, accordion dolls. The thing I want to pay attention to once I lay this down on the pattern is the centers so that I can center it on the block. So I'm looking at that crown there, and there it is. Simple as that. Now next is the real fun part, getting the fabric ready so we can put this thing together. This is the second pattern I made. I always like to have a couple of patterns. You'll see, if you look closely, the triangles are two different sizes. So I wanted to measure the base of each triangle, and they turn out, or wedge, and they turn out to be a little over 3 inches. And then, of course, we know that the diagonal is way more than 12 and a half inches. So what I'm going to do is really measure maybe 4 and a little more on the fabric. And I'm not going to make templates. I'm just going to tear strips of fabric and play it by ear. If you viewed the first video that I made on the Quilting Marines tribute quilt, you'll see that I made the templates, sort of. And here, see, I want to make sure that the length of the rectangles that I'm cutting will reach to the end of the template, so there's plenty of material. Now there's a little bit of waste in this method, but I like making crumb quilts, so I'll use some of the waste for that. You'll see I'm just measuring approximations, and then I'll cut the strips to the length that I need. And you'll see, if you look carefully, you can see the different size wedges. So they're going to be sort of mirror images when I start assembling the pieces. And you continue doing this until you have what you think is enough strips. I forgot how many tears I had to make, but we'll see how it turns out in the end of this. Now do the same thing to the second fabric. This is a pretty fabric. You see all the beautiful sort of abstract purple hearts. I like it. There was a store closing its cotton collection years ago, and I just bought a whole bunch of yardage of so many different patterns. Beautiful. This is pretty on front and back, so you could probably use it either way. But then again, you continue to do the same thing with this fabric, and I'll continue ripping. Well, finished with the tearing of the strips, kind of therapeutic. You'll see now that I'm going to decide how long each strip should be. I need the pattern, but looking at the fabric, you'll see that it's wonky. That's because the store cut it on an angle. I'm going to cut off the selvage. That's all crooked. And you'll see we'll have some more waste because it's so much off the grain. When you tear it, it goes on the grain. So here I'm trying to decide exactly how wide the strips should be. I'm not going to be exact on this, but I'm measuring just to be sure. You know, it's, as they say, you can always take more off, you can't add more on. And you'll see the triangles are going to be different sizes from the base to the vertex, so they're also going to be mirror images, and you'll see as we go along what that looks like. So I'm just going to start whacking away at strips and make a pile of each pattern of fabric. I'm not going to be too exact about this, just, well, maybe I'll do a little bit of measuring and see how it fits the template. Looks like maybe, I think I'm doing a little short, but I'll cut a couple, and then, because some of the triangles, some of the wedges are short and some are long, so if I want to try to cut down on waste, I'll try to be a little more exact, but actually not too worried about having pieces left over. So this is good. And you continue doing this until we have 8 of each, no, wait, 16, yes, 8 of each rectangles for each fabric. Now we could cut the fabric rectangles on a diagonal, but that's just another step that we can avoid. Now, what I'm doing here is really, I guess I should iron this, but let me just keep cutting until I have enough pieces, and I'll iron later. By the way, it's always good to starch. You'll see this is kind of stiff material because it still has sizing in it, but it's always good to starch when you're doing something like this. I'll continue cutting the rectangles, and I'll be back. Well, thank you for watching part 1 of this important project. You know, domestic violence knows no age, knows no gender, man on woman, woman on man, and woman on woman. The rise of domestic violence within the LGBT community is on the rise. And in this day and age when so much of it is in the paper, I think it's important to keep this topic on the front page. So please stay with us for part 2, which should come out in about a week. Thank you very much for viewing this and taking this societal scourge so seriously. Thank you.